There you go. And we have a Rebel News petition success story to share with everyone as the government of
Mhm.
Canada. They have rescinded their digital services tax called the DST. So on Friday, Ezra launched a campaign, stoptheinternetax.ca, which called on the Carney Liberals to rescind this absolutely ridiculous digital services tax. It actually received royal assent back in June of last year, but it was set to be implemented, I think, sometime this coming week. And then, as soon as Trump took to Truth Social last Friday and called out this nonsense tax and said that he would be immediately halting any sort of trade negotiations with Canada so long as this tax was going to be implemented. Carney, with his, campaign elbows up, tough talk on trade against Trump, suddenly folded and flopped. And now, as of yesterday, this news release came out June 29th, where the Department of Finance has announced that they are officially rescinding this digital services tax to advance broader trade negotiations with the United States. And this tax, you can click on that little hyperlink there where digital services tax, that second paragraph is hyperlinked. And this mandated that quote unquote affected businesses would have to apply to register for a digital services tax program account and then of course file their taxes under that. And this included US based businesses like YouTube, Netflix, you name it. As long as they provided a service into Canada, they were being subjected to this mandatory disclosure and cash grab program. And many people, especially us here at Rebel News, said this is just another attempt, the liberals, to regulate the internet. And this
Right.
came, after those dominoes had fallen under the proroguing of Parliament two different times, where things like the Online Harms Act, Bill C-63, was halted in its tracks just because Parliament was prorogued. And that's not to say the liberals aren't going to be reinvigorating it. We'll get to that in a minute, but the White House then immediately confirmed after this was rescinded that they are restarting trade talks with Canada thanks to Mark Carney's elbows down, quick folding of this tax. And I think that we also have, it's not a clip, but we have a post here to share of Pierre Poilievre, leader of the official opposition. And he says, and this is just from just under an hour ago, he says, as recently as 2 days ago, the finance minister insisted the digital services tax would proceed. Then the prime minister put his elbows down and canceled the tax at the 11th hour. The tax is gone for good. In exchange, the prime minister should insist that the US immediately rescind softwood lumber tariffs. We need to make gains for our workers in these talks. Canadians need certainty, and the Liberals will put Canada first and defend Canadian sovereignty in these negotiations. To stand up for Canada from a position of strength, the government must take emergency action to bolster Canada's economy. Fully repeal the No Pipelines Law, the industrial carbon tax, the tanker ban, the emissions cap, the EV mandate, and axe the capital gains tax on reinvestments in Canada. As always, conservatives are ready to help get a good deal for Canada. And I think this is a great point because the liberals, they pass these pieces of legislation, this tax, and they pass it, based on, principled stances and we need these things. And then you see even the slightest bit of pushback, like Donald Trump taking to social media to call them out, and they fold faster than a broken liberal promise. So, yeah, where is any of these firm stances that Carney campaigned on against trade negotiations and trade talks with Donald Trump? You can see that he's just flopping so hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, and when you dig down into this piece of legislation, it was passed a while ago. These companies were supposed to send retroactive payments, like dating back to
Yes.
2022. Um, it's a $2 billion tax grab, and I'm not sure what it's for. They said if they sell your user data or collect your user data, then you pay money to the government. Well, that's my data. You know what I mean? It's not the government's, they don't own it. But the parliamentary budget officer had said that this would bring in $7.2 billion over 5 years, which is a massive tax grab. And you know exactly where all this money was going. They're going to do the same thing as the Online Streaming Act and the Online News Act, where they take the money from these successful American companies and give it to the failing Canadian ones, like the Toronto Star and the CBC, which is really what this is all about. And again, what would it do? Just hike up the cost of using these services on Canadians, so that we can get Rosie Barton a better wardrobe, I guess. Like if the government taxes Netflix, Netflix doesn't eat that. That your Netflix cost goes up. Everybody uses Amazon. Why? For me, because it's cheaper to order to the house than to go all the way to town to get it. But that would no longer be cost effective for so many people. And yet our banker of a prime minister didn't know that until the very last minute.
Well, and that's yeah, and he's also moving his companies and his businesses out of Canada into the United States
Right.
to avoid the
Of course.
regulatory burden, the economic devastation that is plaguing this country, and now trying to harness in on the taxation of those companies who are fleeing and not doing business in Canada because of our regulatory space is just so hostile toward innovation and entrepreneurship. So if you dig down into it, see what exactly Carney's doing. It's definitely not elbows up for Canada. And then, of course, Ezra called it like it was on the campaign launch on Friday, that this would just be another precursor to the censorious wantings of the Liberal Party of Canada, especially under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who tried to implement all of these censorship grabs and pieces of legislation that would facilitate that. So we have this piece here coming from CTV News, where the Liberals are now taking a fresh look at the online harms bill, says our new Justice Minister. So that Bill C-63 that died on the vine when Parliament was prorogued back in January, well, here it's just being reinvigorated under the Mark Carney Liberals. And wouldn't that have nicely complemented the digital services tax? But of course, Carney now has to flop because, well, Trump said so. And instead of flopping in a way that, as Paul Yev's post kind of says, the way that the conservatives would have handled this differently, instead of hitting back with, okay, well, we're going to rescind this tax now, this is what we simultaneously want from you, we want the lumber tariffs dropped, or at least, at the very least, brought down to something more reasonable. And no, instead, all we hear is, well, we're rescinding this. And then please talk with us again, President Trump, because our elbows are down and our tails tucked between our legs and we have nothing to wager on, is what I'm reading in out of all of this.
Yeah, I just wonder what the heck they were up to at the G7. Like this feels like something that they probably should have hammered out at the G7, but then Trump had to leave to deal with a war. Um, and yeah, you are right about Bill C-63. This will be the third time they've tried to introduce this thing that Canadians
Yeah.
don't want, and it's a poison pill piece of legislation because they say it is about stopping revenge abuse images and now deep fakes of real people who might show them in an exploitative manner. I'm doing my best to dance around YouTube's rules right now, but I think we all know what I'm getting at. But that's only one part of the legislation. We already have, like um, blackmail, abuse images, um, intimate partner stuff. That's all already illegal to put that out there to blackmail people or to show images of children. All that stuff is illegal. And now they're saying, well, now we need this because we have to deal with deep fakes of this, deep fakes of real people who might be depicted in this stuff. But that's not at all what it's about because you could just make that illegal if you wanted to. You don't need to do all the other stuff about pre-crimes and causing people potential detestation. And so you have to go to jail for 10 years for a crime you might not have even committed. Um, there are ways to do this and to make the internet, as much as I hate to use their language, a little safer, um, without outlawing every ability of Canadians to speak their minds online, and annoy people. Because basically, a lot of the things that you say and do that annoy the Liberals could be illegal under Bill C-63.
Yeah, and it's just aligning Canada more with the European Union. And as we've seen, even places, well, like the UK and Germany, who's cracking down, and Australia even, but they're not part of the EU, but the EU is cracking down on what people post on the internet, calling it criminal and hate speech and all of these things, and showing up with armed guards to seize people's electronics when they're found to have posted, like in the one case, a German man, his home was raided at like just after 6 o'clock in the morning because he posted some sort of comedic meme that was offensive
Right,
to the government, and they seized all of his electronics to make sure that, I don't know, he wasn't some sort of like domestic terrorist for criticizing the government. So this
yeah,
is more akin to what they're doing in the EU. And as we've seen, Carney is trying to align us more, calling us
right,
more European than any other Western nation, and calling our ties, saying the relationship that we had with the United States historically as close partnerships and allies is over. So
right,
this is all kind of in line with where the Liberals are trying to take this country, and I would say the vast majority of Canadians don't obviously agree with it. But here we are.